Blake Lively's name has dominated entertainment headlines, but not for the usual glitz and glamour. Instead, the star is tangled in a lawsuit so puzzling and potentially disastrous, it's left everyone wondering, is there any truth behind her allegations? Or is this just an elaborate publicity stunt? Today, we're diving deep into every twist and turn of the story, uncovering why many believe this entire case might crumble before it even reaches a courtroom. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see why so many legal experts are shaking their heads. From the outside, this looked like a bombshell suit against Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, and others, with accusations of workplace harassment that sounded downright explosive. But beneath the surface, the lawsuit raises an unsettling question. Does it even hold up legally? It's a situation loaded with mysteries, from suspicious filing methods to a glaring lack of official paperwork. We're about to journey into the strangest chapters of this legal saga, chapters you won't want to miss. The moment news broke that Blake Lively had sued Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios for sexual harassment under federal law, social media lit up with outrage, sympathy, and an avalanche of speculation. Fans and critics alike flooded comment sections, demanding to know what really happened. After all, Blake Lively is no fringe figure. She's an A-lister known for strong roles and a squeaky clean public image. So, a sudden announcement of a major harassment suit was bound to dominate headlines. But the more people read, the more questions arose. The language in Blake's legal complaint was strong, accusing her employers of discriminating against her and creating a hostile environment. She even claimed the harassment was so severe that any reasonable person would have found it oppressive and offensive. Serious stuff, on paper, that is. But then came the first red flag. Her lawsuit was dropped in a federal court in New York. Even though the major players are all in California or have substantial ties to California. That was just the beginning of the confusion. At first, the public response ran hot. Some rushed to back Blake, while others insisted Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer deserved due process before being dragged through the mud. Either way, we got a swirl of raw emotion. And sometimes, intense reactions overshadow the core facts. Only when curious observers started looking deeper did they realize something about her claims didn't quite add up. One of the biggest shockers was learning how Blake Lively got her so-called permission to sue. In California, if you want to bring a sexual harassment claim, you can go to the state civil rights department, often referred to as CRD. Typically, the department investigates. It interviews witnesses, reviews documents, and digs into the facts to see if there's enough evidence of harassment or discrimination. Only then do you get the official right to sue, so you can proceed in civil court. Yet Blake opted for what's called an immediate right to sue. In other words, she didn't let the CRD actually investigate. She filed her request on the exact same day she lodged her complaint, effectively blocking any chance for the state to confirm or deny her allegations. It's like walking into a building, insisting you're being wronged, and marching out the door before anyone has time to ask a single question. At face value, this might seem routine. People sometimes skip the investigative phase if they want a quicker civil case. But here's the kicker. That only covers lawsuits in California state court, not federal court, and definitely not a federal case in New York. Yet Blake's complaint went straight to federal court in a completely different state. This left legal observers shaking their heads. If her claims were real and urgent, why bypass a formal investigation that could have validated her story? Why not use that potential evidence in her favor? Some suspect she was aiming for a bigger media impact. Federal lawsuits sound more serious. Others point to the possibility that a real investigation would have meant placing every statement under scrutiny. Whatever the reason, she chose a path that let her put out big allegations without official oversight or fact-finding from the California authorities. Here's where things become truly puzzling. The United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, sets strict rules for pursuing claims under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the exact law Blake cited in her complaint about workplace harassment. According to these rules, you can't just wake up one morning, draft up a lawsuit, and toss in a Title VII claim. You must first go to the EEOC with a charge of discrimination. This process ensures that the federal government notifies the employer. The employer is given time to provide their side of the story. And if mediation or an investigation is appropriate, the EEOC gets involved. Finally, if the EEOC decides it won't or can't resolve the matter, or if the waiting period has passed, it issues a right to sue letter, specifically for federal court. That's what gives you the legal green light to file a Title VII lawsuit. In simpler terms, if you haven't done the EEOC step, you have no right to file a Title VII harassment claim in federal court. Yet nowhere in Blake Lively's complaint, nor in her subsequent statements, do we see mention of an EEOC right to sue letter. No date, no reference number, nothing. Legally, that's akin to claiming you have a driver's license but refusing to show it when the cop pulls you over. Without that critical piece of paper, the entire lawsuit is on shaky ground. Even more damning is the fact that Blake's own immediate right to sue notice from California explicitly told her, to sue at the federal level, you must contact the EEOC within 30 days. So, she knew. The notice spelled it out in black and white. Her complaint in federal court took shape anyway, and the EEOC angle was never followed up on, at least not in the documents we've seen. You may be thinking, if Blake Lively is telling the truth, wouldn't she want the backing of a government investigation? Wouldn't that boost her credibility? Exactly. An EEOC process can be long, but it's also thorough. Investigators collect evidence, conduct interviews, and require sworn statements under penalty of law. That level of scrutiny can make or break a case, and it can also expose anyone making false claims to serious consequences. Under federal law, lying to the EEOC isn't just frowned upon. It can carry criminal penalties. This isn't about perjury in a lawsuit, which is already serious, but rather making false statements to a federal agency. Some suspect that if Blake's allegations weren't as solid as they sounded, she might have worried about that very risk. Civil lawsuits are governed by different rules, and you don't face quite the same immediate ramifications for false statements. But giving false or misleading info to a federal agency can get you into huge trouble. Skeptics believe she bypassed the EEOC to remain in control of the narrative. Instead of months or years of fact-checking by the government, she could file her complaint in a flashy manner, make headlines, and let public opinion fester. Meanwhile, her legal opposition, Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, and others, had to scramble to respond to something that might not have even been filed correctly. That's not to say her claims are definitely untrue, but from a strategic standpoint, skipping the EEOC does raise eyebrows. Another crucial point is that an EEOC investigation can reveal the entire picture, not just the sensational bits. If there are contradictory texts, emails, or testimonies, the EEOC can uncover them. If coworkers or eyewitnesses dispute her allegations, that becomes part of the record. Some lawyers suspect that's precisely what Blake feared. After all, once you unleash a government agency on your case, you can't control the outcome. If you're still not convinced something is off, consider this. The primary events she described seemingly took place in California or possibly New Jersey, depending on the shoot location. And the most prominent defendants, Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, are also rooted in California, yet Blake chose New York federal court. In legal talk, there's a concept called forum shopping, which is basically picking the court you believe will favor you or limit the other side's defenses. Critics think that might be happening here. If she'd filed in California, she might have faced countersuits under laws like civil extortion and other claims that are recognized more robustly in that state. Meanwhile, in New York, her opponents might find it harder to file those counters or to leverage certain California legal standards against her. Additionally, even though she got her right to sue letter from the California CRD, albeit an immediate one, she didn't actually file there. On paper, her entire reason for going to the CRD was to pave the way for a lawsuit in California. So the question becomes, was she genuinely trying to seek justice where the alleged wrongdoing occurred? Or was she simply trying to circumvent rules in whichever way benefited her? Her attorneys might argue that New York is more convenient for her personally, as a resident. But convenience doesn't necessarily override standard legal procedure. Courts typically want a lawsuit to be filed where the wrongdoing allegedly took place or where most parties reside. For her to pick another state seems far from natural. This begs the question, if the allegations are so solid, why not file where the strongest evidence presumably lives? When Blake's legal filing first hit public record, many attorneys and commentators jumped in. They noticed the repeated references to Title VII, which is the backbone of federal law against workplace discrimination and harassment. Yet, the presence of these claims without a valid EEOC letter is a massive red flag. Brian Friedman, one of the attorneys representing Justin Baldoni, essentially dismissed the complaint as unsound. In so many words, he suggested the entire filing was riddled with procedural missteps and factual holes. Rather than rushing to file a motion to dismiss, Friedman's team appears willing to let the process play out and wait for the case to potentially collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. If their intuition is correct, and if no EEOC filing was ever done, then the judge could easily toss out those Title VII charges for lack of standing. Observers with no direct stake have also chimed in. Some question whether Blake's legal team is using the lawsuit as a PR vehicle, a way to keep her name in headlines. Others wonder if behind-the-scenes negotiations might be at play, with the lawsuit as leverage for a settlement. But with so many holes, is that leverage strong? It might stir up drama, yet from a purely legal angle, it could be close to useless. We can't ignore the timing. Not long before filing her lawsuit, Blake Lively publicly discussed issues with Justin Baldoni's studio in the press, generating a wave of sympathetic coverage. Then, in what felt like mere days, the lawsuit dropped. This rapid shift from public complaint to formal lawsuit often suggests a PR strategy. Perhaps the plan was to ride the wave of public outrage for maximum impact. Make no mistake, legitimate victims do sometimes go public, generating pressure that forces accountability. However, they typically still follow the standard legal channels, especially if they're serious about seeing justice done in court. Blake's approach, immediate right to sue, skipping the CRD's investigation, ignoring the EEOC requirement, doesn't scream careful, reasoned approach. It leans more toward a shock and awe tactic meant for headlines. When a story like this breaks, entertainment outlets go wild. They'll run with big words like explosive accusations or shocking revelations, fueling public curiosity. If you're a star with a strong media presence, you can capitalize on that attention. But from a legal perspective, headlines aren't enough to sustain a case. At some point, hard evidence must back her up. If that evidence was never properly presented to the authorities, her high-profile lawsuit can lose steam fast. Not only her lawsuit, but we know all of the recent shocking stories have really damaged her reputation. Another angle is money. Blake's lawsuit seeks damages, and it references the potential for punitive awards because of the alleged severity of the harassment. Title VII allows for punitive damages if you show malice or reckless indifference. But again, without the EEOC's involvement, the entire claim to those damages is shaky. It's like building a house on a foundation of sand. Lots of hype, no real stability. By now, you've seen how this lawsuit is far more complicated than the early headlines suggested. Yes, Blake Lively leveled sensational allegations at Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios. Yes, the public reaction was fierce. Outrage, empathy, curiosity. But behind the hype lies a glaring issue. If she never got the EEOC's green light, her federal claims might be legally void. Add in a mismatch of jurisdictions, California events in a New York court, and you have a lawsuit that seems built on shaky technicalities. Does that mean Blake is lying about every detail? Not necessarily. But if she's truly confident about her claims, she skipped almost every formal avenue that would solidify her credibility. From an actual CRD investigation to the EEOC's oversight, the narrative now looks more like a high-stakes gamble, with her side hoping the weight of public opinion might scare the defendants into an early settlement or silence. However this plays out, remember that these are precisely the moments when you want to question the motives behind sudden lawsuits, especially ones that turn messy overnight. The truth might still be out there, but if the court can't even hear Blake's Title VII arguments due to a lack of proper filing, we may never see the evidence weighed on its merits. So, the million-dollar question is this: was this ever about justice, or was it about winning the PR war before the legal process even started? We'll have to watch how the court responds to find out. One thing's for sure: this lawsuit is turning into a cautionary tale about playing fast and loose with legal procedures, especially when you're dealing with something as serious as sexual harassment claims. Stay tuned, because this story might unravel in ways that shock everyone, and not necessarily for the reasons Blake Lively first claimed. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe she truly has a valid complaint? Or is this entire situation exactly what it appears to be? A precarious legal strategy that could backfire spectacularly? Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the biggest bombshells aren't the ones that make the headlines, but the details lurking in plain sight. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe.